In 1992, as audiences were watching Alice Cooper ride his revival high with 2 best-selling hair rock albums and an unforgettable performance in Wayne's World, Alice asked to meet Neil Gaiman. Whilst he is now probably best known for his fantasy novels such as Coraline, American Gods and Stardust, Gaiman had only written for comics and was best known for his Sandman series, of which Alice was a fan. Alice wanted to collaborate with him in developing the story of a concept album that he was going to write. The result was a possible sequel to Welcome to My Nightmare, as we see Stephen face off against the mysterious MC of a theatre that doesn't exist, who offers him immortality and immunity from fear. Hello and welcome to Enchanted Essays. I post new reviews and video essays every Friday, so feel free to subscribe if you like that sort of thing. In this video, I will examine the story of Alice Cooper's concept album, The Last Temptation, as well as the accompanying 3-part comic by Neil Gaiman. This is the first video of a 4-part series of videos analysing Alice Cooper's songs about the character of Stephen over the coming months. So, if you like this video, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon to be the first to be notified of the other 3 videos in the series. Now, if you're familiar with Alice Cooper's discography, you may be wondering why I'm starting with The Last Temptation. Wasn't Welcome to My Nightmare the first album about Stephen? Well, yes it is, but I'm looking at The Last Temptations first for 2 reasons. A, some people consider The Last Temptation to be a prequel to Welcome to My Nightmare, and B, because the accompanying comic gives this album the most concrete description of the plot and characters, which will be a key with which we can decipher the plots of the other 3 albums. Needless to say, for copyright reasons, the music in the background of this video is not the album, but I'll leave streaming links in the description. In the comic, Stephen is a squeamish teenage boy who encounters a mysterious theatre on the way home from school with his mates. There, he and his friends meet the showman, a character who bears more than a slight resemblance to Cooper himself. The show is advertised as Grand Guignol, a type of theatre that originated in Victorian France that specialised in spectacles of gore. The showman announces that it will only let 1 child in for free, and the boys peer pressure Stephen into going in. Inside, Stephen meets Mercy, a beautiful young woman working for the showman. In the theatre, the showman shows Stephen what he calls a theatre of the real, terrifying him with the ugly truths of adulthood. Stephen leaves, but not before the showman tells him to return later for the finale. Throughout his day, Stephen sees the showman talking through his mother, school staff and his crush, telling him about the finale and establishing the deal that he wants to offer him. Stephen goes trick-or-treating with his classmates, recreating the showman's makeup. He sneaks off to the library to research the mysterious theatre that had disappeared during the day, discovering decades of old newspaper articles about children going missing on Halloween, and a theatre that burned down 150 years ago. Stephen returns to the theatre as the showman elaborates on his offer. Immortality as a monster free from fear, and mercy in return for the potential Stephen will never use. However, Stephen defies him and burns the theatre down by imagining a fire. Sadly, it is revealed that Mercy was just a prop of the showman's, and she too fades away. Stephen returns home and goes to bed, but not before the showman appears in his reflection and warns him that he'll be back. If this premise sounds like Ray Bradbury's Something Wicked This Way Comes to You, you're not wrong. Stephen is studying the book at school, and Gaiman's own foreword of the complete edition references it, so he is certainly not hiding its influence. I think the easiest way to describe it as Something Wicked This Way Comes by way of Alice Cooper. It's probably why there are carnival-influenced sounds in descriptions and sideshow. I'd actually always assumed it was set in a carnival before reading the comic. I wonder if the theatre setting was an attempt to differentiate itself from Bradbury's book further, as well as integrating the Grand Guignol references that have undoubtedly been the inspiration for Cooper's elaborate stage acts. Unlike Nightmare, where the division between Alice's role and Stephen is blurred, the 2 roles are very separate in both the comic and the album. The lyrics very clearly tell us that there are at least 2 characters, one person who is offering the deal, and another who is refusing to accept it. As for the comic, it is clear that the character of the showman is an incarnation of the Alice Cooper character, while Stephen is entirely separate, although it does hint that Stephen may one day become the showman in some way. The comic also helps to clarify that there are some songs from the perspective of the showman's chorus of zombies playing parts in his performance showing Stephen the horrors of adult life, such as Lost in America and Bad Place Alone, and sort of chorus numbers. Before I go into the album, I want to acknowledge the fact that Alice isn't the only songwriter on it. Whilst Cooper rarely has the sole songwriting credit, he also collaborated with a lot of artists from other bands on this album, such as Soundgarden and Icon. I haven't seen an awful lot of rock operas that feature this much collaboration in the songwriting process, but having already figured out the plot with Gaiman probably helped maintain a singular vision for the album. The first song, Sideshow, is written from the perspective of either Stephen or his friends about the boredom with life and longing for excitement. The reason I suspect it's at least partly about his friends instead of Stephen himself is the fact that they're the ones who are into scary stuff and peer pressure Stephen into watching the performance in the comic. Alice also asks a bright young boy if he is afraid to enter, which also lines up with Gaiman's comic. Nothing's Free is sung by the showman, offering Stephen freedom from morality and the inevitable banality in return for his potential. The double meaning of free is used effectively, as the showman uses it to both offer Stephen freedom whilst reminding him that it will cost him. The showman's offer comes a lot later in the comic, only ever being hinted at the end of the first show. He actually says the opposite at the beginning, telling Stephen that everything is free, including the tickets in the programmes.
And all free today.
Lost in America is where the showman recreates Stephen's vacant, meaningless future existence, using one of his zombies to play the part of future Stephen. The zombie and the showman don't quote the song completely, but it does paraphrase the song, and it's clear which song is being referenced here. In Bad Place Alone, Alice's chorus of zombies show him the adult world of big cities that Stephen fears, singing about their bullet wounds and their drug addictions, and trying to make Stephen join them. Gaiman uses the original lyrics as the zombies' dialogue, which is great, because the lyrics have some great wordplay. These last two songs are reversed in the comic, but I think it makes more sense this way round. After telling Stephen that his life will be wasted in a small town, it seems like a more logical progression for the showman to scare Stephen by making the alternative, moving to a busy city, even scarier. You're My Temptation is about lust, specifically my lust for Mercy in the comic. However, it is a bit ambiguous as to who is supposed to be singing this. In the comic, it is the showman who refers to lust as his temptation, but the lyrics seem to be from Stephen's perspective. They are about resisting temptation. There's also the line, "Your master knows where I'm my weakest," which is presumably referring to the showman. The original outline doesn't include Mercy at all, so her character may have been exclusive to the story of the comic, with the song being written about lust in general, and the name Mercy being a clever nod to the chorus. Stolen Prayer is all about Stephen's contemplation of the showman's offer. This makes it clearer that Stephen is tempted by the showman's offer compared to the comic, by offering an internal monologue. Stephen is starting to question the values the showman is telling him to rebel against, but something is still instinctively telling him that he is wrong. Unholy War is about Stephen preparing for the battle against evil. It's not exactly clear when this would be, but I'd say it could be from the part where he is putting on his makeup to his arrival at the theatre, making it possibly the coolest soundtrack to a library study session ever. As all of the other songs credit other writers alongside Cooper, the sole songwriting credit for this song is the late Chris Cornell from Soundgarden. Lullaby is the closest thing that we get to confirmation that The Last Temptation is a sequel to Welcome to My Nightmare. In it, Stephen sings about how the showman has haunted his dreams. Due to his references to toys and referring to himself as a little boy, I think that he's referring to nightmares he gave him as a child rather than recently. Stephen a Nightmare is only supposed to be around 7 years old, but there are some disputes surrounding that I'll discuss in my Nightmare video. This hints that Alice's role was something of a showman in Nightmare, as some kind of supernatural creature who gave him those terrifying nightmares, which does make sense, but once again I'm getting ahead of myself. It's Me is a beautiful love song. However, it's uncertain who is supposed to be singing it. Obviously the romantic elements are between Stephen and Mercy, but it doesn't really line up with any particular scene in the comic. I wonder if this song is about the future Stephen and Mercy will have together if he accepts, and this is all another illusion of the showman. However, as I said before, I'm not sure if Mercy was created during the development of the comic, rather than the original album. I read a theory online that this song could be written from the perspective of God. It's about always loving someone and being there for them in spite of sinning every sin. And theoretically, I don't think there's anything in the lyrics that contradict it. Whilst I think this may well have inspired the song, I definitely don't think it's intended to be sung from that perspective in the narrative. That would be way too overtly religious for Alice. Cleansed by Fire is the grand finale in which Stephen rejects the showman's offer and burns it down with imaginary fire. The end of the song uses clips of songs from the album fading in and out alongside the chaotic fairground organ, giving the impression that the show is finally dissolving, like it's being sucked into a black hole. It almost sounds like the showman's strength was built on Stephen's fear, and Stephen overcoming that fear caused the facade to crumble. And it does remind me of the finale of Labyrinth, which is always good. After the song has seemingly ended, we get the final echoes of Unholy War, hinting, like the comic, that this may not be the last time Stephen will see the showman. On top of being a gothic Halloween-centred coming-of-age story, there are deeper themes that will certainly stand out to fans of Alice who know what he had gone through at the time. The most obvious theme in this is the temptation of sin. For those of you who don't know, this is one of the first albums after Alice's sobriety and his later return to Christianity. This album certainly doesn't feel preachy in any way. In fact, despite being an atheist myself, I like it when media uses Christian mythology in an interesting way.
We were wondering if we could talk to you about Jesus.
I'd love to hear about Jesus. What's he up to now?
It's only really used thematically and makes for some great lyrics. Needless to say, overcoming the temptation of addiction almost certainly had an influence on the themes of the story. Alice has also said that at the height of his alcoholism, he had trouble telling where he ended and his stage persona began. This could possibly have been the inspiration for the blurring of the lines between the showman and Stephen, like Stephen could very well become the showman himself if he gave in to his temptations. So, what do I think of the album itself? I really like it. It's Me is one of my favourite Alice Cooper love songs, and there are a lot of them. Whilst I do love Trash and Hey Stupid, it is a wise departure of the hair rock of their past two albums that had fueled Alice's comeback, and allowed him to move into a sound that is less of its time, giving it a longevity that the others lack. My main criticism of the comic is that it's too short. I would have preferred something that gave me a better sense of the kind of character that Stephen is, and where some of the other songs could fit in the story. It never felt like Stephen was ever going to contemplate the showman's offer, so there was very little suspense on that part. I don't think I have any issues apart from that. Of course, I would have preferred some confirmation that this is the same Stephen as Welcome to My Nightmare, but this may well be intentional. Nightmare is probably Alice's most popular and critically acclaimed album from this initial solo success, so this ambiguity would allow listeners to choose whether or not they want this to be a sequel. There's also the possibility that Stephen is just a motif, so these video essays may be as useless as Jack Skellington crashing baubles in boiling candy canes to find the meaning of Christmas, but that sounds like a fun level of insanity. I definitely appreciated the album more after reading the comic. It fills in the gaps by giving the story a clear roadmap that the songs don't provide on their own, whilst the album fleshes out the emotional beats of the comic. If these haven't been sold together in some kind of special edition box set, then they really need to be. They definitely elevate each other. I would love to see a stage version or a feature film made of this, uniting the best of both worlds and fleshing out the story around the skeleton of the three-act structure, which would allow more character development and setups for the finale. I'd settle for a stage version, but a whole film of Alice in character would be amazing in my opinion. I recommend reading Gaiman's foreword to the complete edition of the comic, which is told via a framing device written in the second person, and his description of Alice as a person and what he's like to work with is simply delightful. The full edition also includes the original outline for the story, as well as the script for the comic and an afterword by Michael Zulu, the comic artist. What do you think? Do you disagree with any of my theories about Stephen? If so, let me know in the comments below. If I get enough alternative theories in the comments, I'll make a bonus video discussing your opinions. Links to all of my sources are in the description below. If you want me to make more content like this, you can let me know by liking the video. I post obscure film reviews and video essays like this every week, so consider subscribing if you like that sort of thing. If you want to watch the other videos in this series, make sure you hit the notification bell to make sure that you never miss a video. I won't be posting them straight away, as this video was a lot, and I'll need to recover a bit so that I can give each album the attention it deserves. But but I'm planning plenty of classic rock related content that may appeal in the meantime. I'll be reviewing a film starring Alice Cooper, Ringo Starr, and Keith Moon next week, so you can follow me on Twitter to be the first to find out what it is. If you want to watch another classic rock video, you can watch me discussing the film where Alice Cooper beats up the Bee Gees here. See you soon!
Of course I'm gay. Always gay. Never depressed, happy and gay. That's my motto.